Alright, how is everybody doing? Finally, going live on time for once. It is 8:15 on the dot. This is going to be kind of a shorter session than we normally do. We're going to be eating dinner before too long. So, yeah, I know. We eat dinner at like 8:30. Don't worry about or actually, yeah, 8:30. Don't worry about it, It's not every day, but usually, honestly. It works with me though. I like late lunches and I like large lunches as well. So, it's probably partly my fault that we always end up having dinner so late in the day. We're going to be probably not finishing, but moving along in chapter 4. It's going to be chapter 4, and we'll try to do verses 12 to 16. We'll try to get that done at least. So because of that, I won't do too much more of a preamble. We'll get started in just a second. If anybody's on the chat, tell me, thumbs up, make sure everything's going good. Is the audio fine? I guess I'll say that if anybody, if this is one of your first times watching this series, we're going through the Bible, and more specifically the book of Matthew right now. So yes, we're starting at the beginning of the New Testament. This is the 11th section. We're going kind of, I guess you could say paragraph by paragraph, section by section, sentence by sentence, really. And seeing, what things we can draw from the text that way, and doing a real close reading, I guess. Some people may not know that term, but it is a real term, and that describes quite well what we're doing here. So the reason I do this live, one of the reasons, is that way people who are on the live can kind of chat with me, give me some ideas for certain things that I might be struggling with, or just have their own feedback on the passages. That way it's not just me talking the whole time, and if somebody else sees something, we can use that information as well, because almost everybody will see different things in different passages, which is really cool, and that's part of the reason why we're doing this in the first place, right? So let us get started. Sorry, let me move. There we go. Alright, starting at verse 12. When he had heard... Okay, actually, let's backtrack for 1 second. The he in this passage is Jesus. This passage follows directly after the one we read last week. It is the last sentence. Then the devil left him, and immediately angels came and began to serve him. So Jesus is still in the wilderness. He just finished being tempted by the devil, right? That encounter. And he's now being served by the angels. And so then that immediately leads into... When he heard that John had been arrested, he withdrew into Galilee. He left Nazareth behind and went to live in Capernaum by the sea, in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, along the sea road beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who live in darkness have seen a great light, and for those living in the shadowland of death, light has dawned. Okay. So yeah, that first sentence, we'll just start at the beginning, get right into this. That first sentence, so yes, the he is Jesus, and the John is John the Baptist, not the disciple John. We haven't gotten to him yet. I actually think we're going to be getting to him pretty soon. If not this session, it'll be the next one when we finally get to John the disciple and the rest of the disciples. So when Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been arrested. So John, if we were remembering back, was baptizing people by the river, and was accusing, I guess, calling out at least the Pharisees, right? That was kind of one of the things he was doing. Well, it seems John had I don't know if I would call it a problem, a thing with calling people out, because he then turned around, stormed into the king's palace and started calling him out for all the terrible things he was doing, and that didn't turn out so well for John the Baptist. The story is given in more detail in the Gospel of John, I believe. Oh boy, this is getting confusing already. So John has been arrested by King Herod. I think his name was, King Herod. So this is the Herod that was the grandson of the other Herod that we already saw die a while back. So yes, this is getting really confusing. 2 Johns and 2 Herods. Let's try to keep them straight. So John is arrested. Jesus withdrew into Galilee. Okay. Why? I guess I'm not sure why. Okay, no, I think I have some guesses. But if you see what I mean, that doesn't seem to be a foregone conclusion. Like, oh, John's been arrested, I'm going to withdraw into Galilee. Like, why? Like, why is that the next step? Like, why is that the logical conclusion? So, it seems to me that a good deal of time has actually passed between when Jesus was being tempted by the devil in the desert and between this and this moment here. Because we know that Jesus did spend time with John and with John's disciples. We already saw him get baptized by John, right? And John called him out, oh, this is... Actually, no, he didn't do that in this story. In a different gospel, he does. But John baptized Jesus, then Jesus went off into the wilderness, and my guess is that Jesus then, not too long afterwards, came back and spent time with John's disciples and the crowds there, because we know that there were multiple encounters between John and John's disciples and Jesus disciples. Like, they kind of hanged out together a little bit, right? That seems to be where Jesus began his ministry, was by, being there under John, following John around, I guess you could say. I'm not sure how much moving John was doing. And that was kind of how he began his ministry, is, picking up people along the way. That's how Andrew, I think it is, first found out about Jesus. Was John said, oh, look, there he is, the Lamb who will take away the sins of the world, or something like that. And then Andrew was like, oh boy, I gotta go follow this guy, if John's pointing him out. So my guess is that John is arrested, and Jesus knew that he might be affiliated with John. Right? That some people might say, oh, now we need to go after that Jesus guy. Whether Jesus was that kind of name yet at all is uncertain to me. I mean, it said he began his ministry. Did it say that? Am I making that up? I feel like there was a sentence where it was like, and then he began his ministry. Maybe not in the last section, but right after he was baptized? Maybe? Okay. So no, I don't see anything that says, he began his ministry or began preaching the word. In fact, I just noticed verse 17 of chapter 4, which I couldn't fit in this one slide. I was going to include it too. Is, here, I'll show it real quick. Verse 17 only. From then on, Jesus began to preach, repent because the kingdom of heaven has come near. So, Jesus does not begin preaching until he moves over to Capernaum, right? Until he goes to Galilee and Capernaum. That is when his ministry really begins. That is when he begins preaching, and it is also there where we see, at least, him taking his first couple disciples. So, I guess Jesus probably wasn't as worried that people would say, oh, we got John, now we need to get his henchman Jesus. It was more so, John was arrested. That whole group of people were now scattered. There was no point in Jesus sitting there on the Jordan anymore, So, after John had been arrested, Jesus withdrew. Withdrew is an important word, yeah. Like, he was sort of on the run a little bit, trying to get out of there. It wasn't a great situation. Into Galilee. He left Nazareth behind, so he also left Nazareth. See, this is interesting too. He left Nazareth behind makes it almost sound like he had just been in Nazareth. I honestly don't know. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I want to look up how far apart are Nazareth and the Jordan River. Because if they're really, really close, then that makes total sense to me. But if they're, not even close, then I don't really know. Okay. I mean, they're kind of close to each other. I don't know. Oh, wait. I think I figured it out. Matthew is skipping a part of this story. So after John is captured, right, or around the same time, Nazareth is in Galilee, yeah. So around the same time John is captured, right, Jesus goes to Galilee. And he stopped in Nazareth, remember? And he preached in Nazareth, and they frankly hated him, right? They kicked him out. So I think we will have to follow the other Gospels and see if they give us more hints as to the timeline here. I think Jesus was with John on the Jordan. Then he went to the wilderness. Then he probably went back with John. Then when John was arrested, he went to Nazareth. Nazareth kicked him out. So he left Nazareth behind and then went to live in Capernaum by the sea. That makes sense. I think Matthew's just kind of skipping part of the story that he didn't think was relevant. And the Gospels do this. They're not totally factual in the way that our modern standards might want them to be. And they are also not even always perfectly chronological, because we know, based on other texts, that wasn't something the Hebrew people and just scholars of that time in general cared about that much. When they wrote biographies and things like that, it wasn't so much, here are all the facts of this person's life in perfect order. It was, they told it like a story, which, kind of makes sense. So Jesus left Nazareth behind and went to live in Capernaum by the sea in the region of Zebulun and Naphtali. Okay, so the sea is not the Mediterranean Sea. It is the Sea of Galilee. I blanked for a second there. So this area, right, this is northeast Galilee. Okay. Time for a little history lesson. Northeast Galilee. Galilee was kind of a weird area in that it was mostly cut in half. Israel was kind of one nation, right? And there was the whole Judea area in the south that was connected, and it was very Jewish. Then there was Samaria, smack dab in the middle, and then in the north and northeast especially was Galilee. And so, Samaria was, enclosed by Judea and Galilee, almost. Galilee was still, I believe, they were all under Roman rule, but Galilee was still kind of seen as Jewish, right? In a way Samaria really wasn't. Samaria was, oh, we don't like the Samaritans. They're completely mixed. They're a different culture. We really don't like them. They did terrible things in the past, whatever. Galilee was still Jewish, and they had good relations, but it's a little bit down the totem pole. Like, it was, maybe not as Jewish. Maybe a little bit more mixed heritage. And at the very least, I think Galilee in general was just kind of poorer, if that makes sense. So, the next passage. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, along the sea road beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who live in darkness have seen a great light, and for those living in the shadowland of death, light has dawned. Alright. So this is the area Jesus decides to set up as his home base, right? Kind of in the middle of nowhere. Nobody really likes or cares about Galilee that much. You see, the best clue we have on how the proper Jews thought of Galilee and Galileans is based on what they say, right? They ridicule Jesus' disciples for being Galilean, and Jesus himself, right? This prophet out of Galilee. And then the best line that I can remember that gives us hints here is when they accuse Nicodemus of being from Galilee. They say, "You aren't from Galilee too, are you?" That gives you a glimpse of what Galilee was to them, right? It was kind of not really Jewish, and it was, weird things happened in Galilee, I guess would be kind of the way to put it. That's where all the crazy prophets are, way up in Galilee. They don't really follow the proper law up there. So that is where Jesus begins. That's where he starts his ministry. Part of that, I think part of the reason Jesus went there and why it was the place chosen for him was because of that reason. Because the Pharisees didn't have as much of a presence in Galilee, I don't think. Or at least, it's not like he's sitting right outside Jerusalem where the Sanhedrin's sitting there waiting for him, Galilee is kind of way out there. And so it's a lot easier for somebody like him to gain a following without causing an uproar as quickly. I think that's part of the reason. Part of the reason is because Galilee is the backwaters of Judea, right? Jesus has a pretty consistent track record of going after the people that nobody really cared about and that were the most lowly that he could find. So then, the prophecy from Isaiah, in Isaiah itself it reads, "Nevertheless, the gloom of the distressed land will not be like that of the former times, when he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future he will bring honor to the way of the sea, to the land east of the Jordan, and to Galilee of the nations. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. A light has dawned on those living in the land of darkness." Okay. So the last part there, that's the part that is in Isaiah, at least in this translation, it's cut off, like a poetic verse or a prophecy of sorts, and it reads like that. It has a very natural rhythm and, two sentences that have pretty similar length and rhythm. So, somewhat poetic, and it's very prophetic in nature. The people who live in darkness have seen a great light, and for those living in the shadowland of death, light has dawned. What is this talking about? The people of Galilee in particular, Israel in general, and the world as a whole were living in darkness. Galilee in particular, and that Galilee, as we said, was kind of, the backwaters. And so that whole passage was talking about how in past days Galilee was desecrated. It was nothing, but it'll see the light again. Galilee will be, he will bring honor to the way of the sea, right? It is for Israel in general, right? The people of Judea were in subjugation. They were taken over by a Roman Empire. They were in slavery, essentially. Not really, but, close. A lot of people were probably in poverty. It was a terrible time materialistically, but then also spiritually, right? The Pharisees and Sadducees had strayed from the law. No one knew God, it seems, or not very many people. And sin, as always, had control over the world. So, that is what the prophecy here is. And it's a really powerful image. The parallel of Jesus with the light, right? The light and darkness is one of my favorite images, object lessons, I guess. I'm not really sure. There's a better word, but I can't think of it at the moment. And this is a very good image of that, right? We can talk about a lot more when we get to those passages. John 1 talks about this a lot, the first epistle of John. And the book of John in general talks about light as well a lot. Excuse me. And in those passages we'll see a lot more, but it's this idea that all of us are walking around in the darkness, unsure of where we should go, unsure of our ways, trying to hide in the darkness, and then there's this light. And we're scared of the light, The light kind of hurts. We don't know if we want to get close to the light. The light will reveal what we look like. It'll reveal all the wrong things we've done. But if you do get close to the light, just imagine how much better your life would be. And the second half of that is then that we become the light. Try to decide, I guess. I feel like we didn't talk about too much in this one, but as I said, I wanted to make it shorter. I'm trying to decide if I want to do that second section. I'm worried there's quite a bit too much to do. We would be here a very long time. So we're going to leave it at that. Shorter session. Well, not too much to talk about in this one, but that's okay. I will see you all in the next stream. It'll be Monday as always. Hope everybody has a good rest of their week. And I will